All right, welcome back, Generals and Admirals. This is General Johnny, and today I'm going over the Baltic Battalion DLC review. So this thing dropped, I believe, like 3 days ago. So I've had some chance to actually play in game, kind of experience some of the changes they talked about in the DLC notes. So not only is the DLC free, added a new specialization map and all that, it also, had a lot of bug fixes. So we'll just go over the main things. So the agenda, we're going to watch the release video. We'll look at the DLC notes, and then we'll also preview that new map, which is the Kadaga map, which is on the main screen here. And then after that, so just the summary of kind of the changes, like we were talking about, the new specialization. So the Baltic Battalion specialization, I would say that specialization in itself is kind of, for the US, I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. I'm not going to go through the specialization, all the units specifically in this video. I'll actually save that for the next video. So stay tuned for that. We're also going to go through the new map. So the Kadaga map, I haven't really been able to play much on that map. I played once just as an internal, and it was pretty good, but not enough to, be super proficient on that map. We'll also go through just one map change that they did go through on the dam, which I actually have played a few times, and that was a pretty significant change there. Also unit icon. So if you're coming back, you did the DLC and you noticed, people were asking if Russia got a bunch of new units. They didn't. They just changed the unit icons, and we'll kind of show what that change was there. And then also the game mechanic changes. So primarily smoke, bombings, or the bombing runs with the high altitude bombings, and then also things like the helicopter responsitivity has changed as well. So all that and more. So without further ado, we'll get this one kicked off. And before we do, please like and subscribe, join the channel. The next video I'm releasing, I will go over all this specialization combinations with the Baltic Battalion, and kind of talk about the best practices, kind of show some of the in-game units and how to use those effectively. So don't miss out. All right, we'll go ahead and open up this DLC and check it out. So if you haven't already, come here and you can download it for free. Alright, so that was the video, and honestly I think the preview video was a lot cooler, but it does remind you, so they added Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, which are the 3 Baltic nations there within the Baltic nation specialization. So again, I won't go through all that today, but in the next video. But let's look at the kind of like the patch notes and the DLC notes. So it tells you the new army specialization, the new map, new solo co-op mode with the new map for Kadaga, the new battalion AI preset for skirmishes, the new profile customizations, and then the music compositions, which, to be honest, I think they did better with the new music compositions on the last update, but it's just not my cup of tea. But I'm glad they're adding, new music soundtracks. It's really hard to beat because I think this game has a pretty awesome soundtrack to begin with. So some of the new features, I'm not going to go through every single point here. You can kind of read it, but this is a pretty big one. You are able to report and commend other players. So once you're done the game, once it pulls up kind of your stats, you can do that, which I think it was a really pretty good thing they added on there. Some of the improvements, so they actually reduced the game size, which I think they're thinking ahead, because I saw something released a little bit earlier where it shows kind of what the DLCs and the new updates that they're going to come out with. So I'm glad that they're doing things like this to kind of reduce the overall size that this game takes up. Okay, what else do they have here? So, something I don't really play the skirmish mode, but it's something to note. So, players can now resupply AI teammates in the skirmish. So, if you do play that, that's a pretty big update as well. Okay, so this is one of the probably the biggest first thing that we come across is the helicopter better predicts obstacles when flying low. So they use less or they lose less speed and stop being stuck in some cases. So I don't know if you guys use helicopters a bunch, but when you're in kind of an urban area, they tend to get stuck on buildings. The pathfinding is really bad, especially if it's flying over a building, especially at low altitude. So I believe that that's kind of what it's talking about. And I have noticed a little bit more efficiency on using those helicopters. So big change there. New loading illustrations, that's pretty cool. I'm glad they're like continuing to improve upon the art of this game, because honestly the illustrations are really good and really good for this time around. So I really appreciate that they're doing that as well. What else? So improve some of the VFX and SFX, which is pretty good. Updated some of the forest and grass visuals. Okay, they also changed a bunch of things on the editor. Again, I'm not going to go into any of that. The editor is super useful, but I'm glad that they're improving on that because it is so useful. Last time they did make a lot of changes to the editor. You can see kind of some of the changes here that they made as well. Okay, so big thing on the map. So outside of the new Kadaga map, the dam, so they actually kind of shrunk the overall size by bringing in the size of the map. And I think also like the spawns are much closer. I did play it a few times, and I have noticed it is a significantly different, in my opinion, better map now. It's kind of unfair the way it was set up, and I think they also changed some of the elevation disparity and some of the line of sights with the tree line is what it's talking about here. So pretty good changes to the map overall, in my opinion. Emergency airdrop feature added. So I don't really airdrop, but I have seen a lot of airdrops recently. Not sure if it was because of this mechanic, but pretty good mechanic they added in there. Okay, infantry damage now takes into account the number of soldiers in the squad. Bigger squads will take slightly more damage, and smaller squads will take slightly less. The size of the squad is measured dynamic and takes into account the losses sustained. So I think that's pretty good that they're taking into account the unit size when they're talking about this damage. And I don't think the damage to any of the units was completely linear before, but it is more dynamic now, at least with the infantry. The anti-overkill, so big thing with the S300. So basically, it will automatically shoot the second shot of your S300s. I think before it would hold off on firing that second missile until after the flares were fired, especially, well, basically to prevent overkill for the S300s, which have pretty big damage. So I think that's a really good thing. I would still, when I've been playing the game, what I've noticed is I still force fire my S300s or packs if I need to, and I still think it helps, but I think the lag is a little bit less because it does this automatically itself as well. But I don't think it hurts to continue to micro it like that. Helicopter movement inertia slightly reduced to take more to be more reactive. So this kind of goes in with the other point, but just all in all, the helicopters are more maneuverable with this update. The artillery smoke duration increased from 60 to 90 seconds. So keep in mind that is the artillery smoke, so not necessarily vehicle smoke. I believe vehicle smoke remains the same. I haven't noticed any changes, but the artillery smoke 60 to 90 seconds. At first, I was a little bit concerned that this was going to be too long. I actually do like it. It makes smoke way more valuable. You can smoke off a lot of area and make a really good push, and you don't have to necessarily, you have more time to do that maneuver now that it's 90 seconds, and then also you don't have to time it up so perfectly because you have that extra 30 seconds of coverage if you do fire the smoke. So I actually really do like that update. It's not something that I was really asking for in this DLC, but I think it's pretty good, and I think it's fanning out well. Some of the howitzers aim time are different. The MLRS aim times are also increased. So I haven't really noticed a huge difference on either one of those. I don't know why they changed that necessarily, especially if it's for both factions. I think the MLRS for the Russians, the Tornado is way better, so I don't know why they would want to kind of like nerf that. But either way, I know it seems like kind of a big change with, I think, 4 to 5 seconds difference on both of these, but I haven't necessarily seen like a huge difference on that. Okay, infantry, MMGs, talk about MMGs. Oh, so tank gun dispersion reduced, resulting in less missiles missed at long range. So this is pretty good. I think that the tanks, yeah, at long range, sometimes they like miss completely. So I'm glad that they're increasing the range, or the dispersion is being reduced, which effectively is increasing the effective range. Okay, this is another really big one: the precision guided munitions. So think your Stormbreakers, your LJ-DAMs for the U.S. players, but they will not start their aim time until the plane is at high altitude. So I have seen the effect of this in game. Basically, so it will, as soon as you release the precision strike, it will put your plane into high altitude unless you're shift commanding. So if you have a shift command before there, that's just like a movement order at low altitude, and then you shift command the precision munitions. If the time between that last movement to the actual bombs isn't enough, it won't drop. So this is actually a really big change that I think it's important to note. So all the people that use precision bombs regularly, hopefully know what I'm talking about. But just be careful, because the worst thing that can happen is you're doing a precision strike, it flies over its target area, doesn't drop the bombs, and then it gets shot down by AA or ASF. So that's a really big change, and honestly, I don't like it. I don't think it really needed a nerf. I think it was probably to get at the U.S. air superiority kind of differential there, but I think there's probably other ways to get around it other than doing this, but it's whatever. And then they fixed a bunch of exploits. I have noticed. So, pressing escape during the deployment phase, spawning units without delays. The other biggest change, and I think it mentions some in here, but the labels to the unit. So I'll go show you in the game in a second here the label differences, but pretty much all the units got different labels, and it's more specific to what customization you have on that vehicle. So you can kind of read the other fixes. I'm not going to go through each and every single one of them, but all pretty good fixes. So I in general, I would give this update like an 8 out of 10. I do like the DLC itself, the specialization. I think it's really cool what they're adding. I think honestly they're trying to put off as long as possible adding in like China and some of the Russian specialization. I think they're going to add in another Russia specialization next, but I think they really need to add that stuff in. But this is I guess in the meantime, this is pretty good. I think all in all, I'm glad they're making more and more fixes. Obviously, the biggest thing they need to add in is replays into this game. I think that would be awesome. So you can watch cinematic replays. You can do a bunch of cool stuff if they just added in those replays. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about on the patch notes or the DLC update. I'll just go ahead, show you real quick. We're going to go through the map in a second, but while I have you here, I'll just show you kind of what I was talking about. So number one, they changed the unit icon completely for like the VDV, Spetsnaz, and a few other units. But you can see here, so based off of your specialization, right? If you're doing the RPG 16 launcher, it looks like this. If you're using the thermobaric launcher, it looks like this. So that goes across a lot of different weapon systems. This one, I guess it's not big enough difference for it to actually show. But let's see. So you can see here, as soon as you add on the IGLA onto this BTR, this ADA like BTR, it adds on the IGLA onto the picture. So things like that is something I noticed. Like if you can't tell in real life the change, then I don't think they changed it. So like a lot of the planes aren't affected by this at all. But other things like, let's see, where's that close range unit, like the engineers, wherever it is. Let's see if this is, so the SSO standoff, you can tell the difference between if it's going to hurt you. Close quarters kind of looks like this, and the standoff looks like this. So I think that was a really good fix. I'm gonna be honest, I don't love some of the icon changes. specifically. I think like the T15, the Barbarous, like I just think this looks silly compared to this, in my opinion, or at least in the game. So, but really good fix. And before we end today, we're going to go through real quick, and we're just going to do a skirmish on the new map, give you a preview of what that looks like. And then, like I said, next video, I'll go through all the Baltic Nation customizations and hit the big points there. Let's go ahead and get you into Kadaga. All right, so here we are on the new map Kadaga, and this is just the loading screen, but you can see you got on one side of this kind of island, middle point B, you have 4 points, and then on the other side you have 3 points. And from this perspective, yeah, so you got 4 points on the left, you got Bravo in the middle here, and you got the far right. And a few things to note, you have one of each ground, air, and helicopter spawn. And another thing is, I think the spawns are pretty close to the objective areas, or at least the group of objectives. And between each objective, maybe not so much on this side, but I feel like they are pretty close to each other as well. So I think a little bit smaller of a map altogether, which is really going to affect air on this map. But I really like the diversity of this map, how many different kind of areas. So you have like super open flank area over here, but then they also have some woods and buildings on the flank. You have this really neat urban area, which I haven't really seen it like this before, where it's like urban, like a big patch of urban with the objective as one part of it, and then woods and plains kind of surrounding that urban center. And then you also have this point, which is interesting, kind of reminds me of a few pills. And then this whole thing kind of reminds me of meandering, but it's actually really different than meandering river. And then this middle point is going to be really interesting. Believe it's going to fold like a 1v1 here, with some kind of choke point entrances as well. And then you've got this side, which is pretty open in between, but then you have the surrounding areas as well. So this is kind of just a preview of the map. Once I've played it a few times, again, I've only really played it once in skirmish mode. Really excited to play it on a full multiplayer, see how it plays and feels. But I really like this addition and kind of the different diversity they have going on in this map. So thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hopefully kind of summarized all of the new DLC content, so that you can download it and you're not shocked at all the changes. But please, if you enjoyed this video, if you learned anything, like and subscribe to General Johnny, where I go over all things real-time strategy and all things Broken Arrow. My next video again will be on the Baltic Battalion. All the units, will give examples of the units and also what the best specialization combinations for the new DLC are. So I will see you next time.